When I first moved in, my RA told me my roommate Kevin had checked in 2 weeks earlier. When I got to the room, his side was perfectly clean, neat, and straight. Nothing out of the ordinary. I've always been pretty introverted, so I was hoping my roommate wouldn't be too much of a bother. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first week went by quietly enough. I heard the usual college noises at night, music thumping through the walls, people shouting down the hall, doors slamming. But I never heard Kevin. I'm a light sleeper, so I figured I'd wake up if he came in late. Still, every morning his bed was made, his desk untouched, everything exactly the same. Then little things started to change. His toothbrush would be angled differently than before. His hamper slowly filled with clothes I didn't remember seeing. I told myself I must have imagined it, but every day there was some small sign that Kevin had been there even though I never saw or heard him once. And that's when I started to feel it, that quiet, heavy sense that I wasn't really alone. It was the start of the second week when I woke up to the faint sound of running water coming from the shower. I've always kept doors closed when I sleep, a habit I've had since I was a kid, and this room was no different. I slowly got up, turned on the light, and found no one there. The floor was damp, the mirror fogged up, and there was a faint smell of shaving cream, one I'd never noticed before. The next night, still on edge, I decided to take some sleeping meds and just pass out since I had an early class the next morning. But around 4:45 a.m., the air felt heavier. I woke up to a deafening silence, like the room itself was holding its breath. My heart sped up, my breathing quickened. It felt like the room was waiting for me to move. Then my phone lit up with a notification on the headboard. The glow cast a reflection on my TV, and there between my bed and Kevin's was the outline of someone standing. I froze. The air felt thicker than ever. Slowly, I reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight, but before I could, I noticed the comforter on Kevin's bed moving like something had lain down, gotten up, and then settled back. I hesitated. The blanket rose and fell, slow and steady like breathing. With every blink, I hoped it would stop, but it never did. I couldn't turn on the flashlight. I couldn't even move. Finally, I opened my camera and started to record. The comforter kept rising and falling for about 30 seconds before I stopped. When I replayed the footage, the video was completely black. I couldn't see the bed at all, just the rest of the room, frozen and still. Then at the very end of the clip, a faint whisper came through the speaker, too close, too real, as if it was right there beside me. It said, "Don't get up." That sentence lodged under my ribs and lived there. I lay on my side and stared at the glow leaking around the blackout curtains and counted my breaths like I was trying to trick the room into thinking I was asleep. The comforter across from me lifted, held, sank. Lifted, held, sank. The rhythm hooked into mine until my lungs were towing whatever was on that bed. A thin draft threaded across my cheek like someone running two cold fingers near my skin without touching it. The smell of shaving cream had a chemical sweetness, like a barbershop and a hospital had shared towel. When the alarm went off at 7, I didn't move right away. I waited for the room to breathe with me again. Nothing. The comforter lay flat. Dust motes spun in the strip of light. My mouth tasted like I'd been sucking pennies. I reached for my phone, scrolled back to the clip, hit play. Black screen. The room still. The whisper, the words crisp enough to slice paper. I watched it 3 times. I didn't need to. It wasn't like the message would change. I used the bathroom with the door open that morning, which is something I never do. I brushed my teeth staring at the shower curtain, daring it to twitch. The drain gurgled on its own. I didn't run water. A dot of condensation fattened on the chrome, bulged, and fell without a sound. I wiped my face with a towel that smelled faintly of that same shaving cream and checked the tag because that's the kind of stupid detail your brain grabs onto when it's spiraling. The tag said property of facilities. I'd never seen a towel with that tag. My RA's name was Logan, a junior with a lanyard and chapped lips and that practice calm you get when you've had to take a drunk kid's keys at 3 a.m. I found it at the desk, sipping something out of a mason jar with slices of lemon and cucumber floating in it like trophy coins. Hey, I started. My voice came out wrong, too low, like it had taken the stairs instead of the elevator. He grinned in that RA way that is part friendly, part assessing threat. "What's up? You said my roommate checked in early." "Kevin, yeah. I haven't seen him. Ever." Logan did something with his mouth that wasn't a smile. "He keeps odd hours." "Yeah. Does he breathe heavier than the room?" I said. "Does he whisper through phones? Does he shower without turning the faucet?" The corridor swallowed sound like a sponge. Logan leaned in. His lanyard creaked. "You're not the first person to ask where your roommate is. It's the second week. Students change rooms. Paperwork lags. Don't make this a thing in your head. I have a video. Don't show me," he said immediately. Not a request. A reflex. "Listen, you're fine. If there's a facilities issue, file it. Don't make this a thing." I laughed, which is how I cope when something presses a thumb over my windpipe. "You're telling me you don't want to see proof. I'm telling you that if you watch anything at 4 in the morning, your brain will make a monster out of Shadow. Also, if you file a video under maintenance, you will become a meme in our group me, and I like you enough to give you the adult version of the policy. Don't." He handed me a slip of paper. It had a QR code and the title, "Living with a Stranger." Tips: headphones, shower schedule, set boundaries. "Is there a rule I should know about?" I asked. "Like, do not get up?" The way Logan's eyebrows twitched was microscopic. He shook his head. "Just be chill," he said, and then added, like a lifeguard instructing you not to splash the blood in the water, "Keep your door closed at night." He kept talking, a soft wash of words, but I'd already latched onto the static in his pause. He knew something. He wasn't going to stay at the desk with Lana Del Rey playing at half volume and freshmen wincing in and out of the elevator with fluorescent backpacks. And if he wasn't going to say it publicly, maybe he wasn't allowed to say it at all. I went back to the room with the paper in my pocket like a fake talisman. I lined up talismans like a child. I vacuumed, I folded socks, I tucked the sheets, I set a cheap clearance bin baby powder by the door. That night, before 11, I dusted a thin line of powder from the bathroom threshold to the space between the two beds. It looked stupid and ceremonial, which is exactly why it made me feel a little better. The powder made it real. If there were footprints in the morning, they would not be my brain rehearsing fear. They'd be talc pressed into carpet. I lay down early, faced the TV, left the screen black. I tried to list rivers in alphabetical order. That took me to the Arkansas, and then nowhere. Sometime after 2, the hall went quiet the way a mouth goes quiet before it closes around a word. Air, heavy, mattress, holding me. My eyes slid open without my permission. The line of powder glowed dully. You can't imagine silence in a building like that until it happens, and then you realize its normal noise is 1,000 tiny declarations of life. Pipes clattering, vents answering, a skate while hitting a seam in the tile. And when all of that switches off when the building stops speaking, it's because it has turned to listen to something else. The shower hissed. Not loud, just that steady shhhh like someone had pinched the faucet to drip and the water had decided to come anyway. The smell of shaving cream rolled under the door. It wasn't the smell of my own can. It had this mini, cheap burn to it. I could taste it in my throat. The line of powder at the bathroom threshold blurred. Not footprints. Not at first. It was more like someone had leaned too hard against the floor and the talc had recoiled. Then slowly, the space between the beds patterned with soft ovals, pressed heel to toe, as patient as a watch. My breath tried to climb out of me. I clamped my lips shut and let it hit my teeth. The powder print stopped in the exact center of the space between the beds, the exact place where my TV had shown me a standing shadow, and then the comforter opposite me sighed. The bed sank like a tide, drawing down. The powder prints shivered a little, like ankles settling. The comforter rose, fell. It matched me without mercy. Every time my chest lifted, that blanket lifted at the same speed, and I got the feeling that if I slowed mine, it would slow to keep time, and if I stopped mine, it would stop too. You get stupid when you're scared. You get brave in ways you don't have to live with if you die. I put my hand down under the blanket, slow as a plant, and inched my knuckles until they hit the cool metal of my phone. My fingers shook just enough that they slurred the face unlock and the camera refused to understand. I forced it to video. I aimed it where the powder prints ended and the bed moved. I hit record. I didn't move again. 30 seconds. 40. The red dot pulsed in the corner like a heartbeat. My own heart counted out a rhythm. Don't get up, don't get up, don't get up. I stopped recording. I didn't watch. I lay with my eyes open until morning made a pale bruise out of the room. At 8, I sat on the edge of the bed and watched my hand open the Photos app like it was attached to someone braver. The video showed the empty room, my nightstand, my sneakers, the blurry powder line. Nothing else. Then at the very end, through the speaker, close enough that I turned my head in reflex, "Don't get up." I wish I could tell you that I ran to Logan with this proof, and he finally took me seriously and banged on some hidden door and pulled out a file with a top secret stamp that said, "Do not wake the dead." I wish that was the path. Instead, I texted my friend Casey. Casey lived 2 floors up and had the kind of face that made teachers ask him if he was okay. He had a birthmark on his neck that looked like fingerprints because his baby photos had shown a nurse holding him too tight. His presence made me feel like I was a main character in my own life, which is exactly the sort of person you call when you think you're a side character in a haunting. He knocked twice and walked in with a bag of pretzels and a headlamp. "If I say, 'What the fuck?'" he said, "pretend I came up with something smarter." Look, I held out the phone and watched shame wash up in my face even though I hadn't done anything wrong. He listened to the whisper. He didn't laugh. He didn't perform. He put the phone down, wiped both hands on his jeans, and said, "Okay, that's a problem. You're supposed to tell me I'm tired. You are tired, and that's a problem too." He went to Kevin's side of the room and ran one finger along the edge of the desk. No dust, the kind of clean that looks like a decision. He opened the top drawer. Inside, empty except for a single plastic-wrapped flexible comb like the ones they leave in hospital go bags. The wrapper said "Compliments of Campus." He looked at the hamper. It was half full with clothes you could buy by the pound. Nothing looked worn. Nothing was still stiff with store fold. The pile had that neutral smell of an unslept-in bed in a furniture showroom. Casey pinched the sleeve of a gray t-shirt with 2 fingers. A tag itched at the seam. "Facilities," he read. "This is weird as hell." I told him about the powder. He nodded. He got on the floor and sniffed like a raccoon. "Smells like old men. Learn to shave inside your carpet," he said. We left at noon to go sit under a tree and pretend we were the kind of people who did outside. Casey leaned back with his face to the sun and listened while I emptied my head onto the grass. He interrupted once. "When did you start closing your door to sleep?" "Always," I said. "Since I was a kid." "What happened when you were a kid?" "Bad dreams. Hall shadows. Do you ever sleepwalk?" "No." "Okay," he said. I hated that soft okay. It was the sound a doctor makes when the lab result was already in the chart. At 4 in the afternoon, the building smelled faintly of disinfectant and microwave noodles. Logan was at the desk again, flipping through a thick binder like he expected to find something time-sensitive between the laminated pages of How to Talk to Your Roommate About Dishes. Casey said, "Dude," because he doesn't have any religious architecture when it comes to our ace. Logan looked up and pasted on his face. "Gents, I want to switch rooms," I said. "A lot of movement in week 2, he said. "It's not movement. It's..." I stopped because I didn't want to say it out loud where the walls could hear. Casey slid his phone onto the desk like a dealer. "He's got a bed ghost," he said. Logan frowned. "We don't use words like..." "Fine. He has an occupant with an unconventional presence." Logan closed the binder put to show he was focusing. His fingers found the edge and worried it like a hangnail. "I can open a ticket." "For what?" Casey said. "Exorcism? Or, sorry, facilities." Logan took a beat. He glanced at the door as if to make sure nobody was coming in. He lowered his voice. "There are certain patterns in old buildings. We ask you to be respectful." "Of what?" I asked. "Schedules," he said finally. "Some residents keep odd hours. Don't interrupt." I stared. "Don't interrupt breathing?" Logan's jaw worked. He looked tired in a way that makes you think of pages turning and turning. "Don't get up," he said so quietly I wasn't sure I heard it. Then he shook his head like he'd said the wrong thing. "So you do know," Casey said, pointing, his wonder edged with anger. "I know that the housing office does what it can with the resources it has. I know there are more bodies than beds. I know some rooms hold traditions. If you file a transfer, you'll go to the bottom of the list. If you keep your head down, you'll survive the semester and move out." "Survive? A figure of speech," he said. "Sit on the bed. Keep your door closed at night. If you smell anything odd, shaving cream, don't answer noises. Don't narrate. Don't escalate. What happens if I get up?" I asked. "Don't," he snapped. Then, gentler, "When you get the urge to prove what's happening to you, put your hand on your chest and count 5 breaths. In, out. Try not to become the interesting thing in the room." "So this is a thing and you're telling him to play dead?" Casey said. "Cool safety plan." Logan stared at a spot on the carpet that probably had a perpetually damp streak under it. "It isn't about you," he said. "That's the mistake. You think it wants something from you. It doesn't. It wants to keep the schedule." "What schedule?" I asked. Logan tapped the binder. The binder's spine had a title in all caps: Incidents Seasonal. "You didn't get this from me," he said, and then slid a photocopy out from between pages with the skill of someone who had done this before. It was a single sheet. Rules. Not official rules. There was no letterhead, but rules printed in a font that had rounded edges like it wanted to be friendly. 1. Between 4:30 and 5:15, remain horizontal. 2. Do not stand in the space between beds. 3. Do not look directly at the second bed. 4. If you hear water, do not approach the bathroom. 5. If addressed, do not reply. If you must, whisper, "I'm sleeping." 6. If you record, expect blackouts. 7. If you must move, move under the blanket. At the bottom, in faint pencil in a different hand, "Don't get up." The page trembled in my hand like it contained its own air conditioner. "What is this?" I asked. "Just a thing older RAs pass around," Logan said. "Anxiety management. That's a polite way of saying it's happening and we can't fix it," Casey said. "If you need a wellness counselor, I can. I need a room where my roommate isn't breathing through me," I said. Logan pushed the photocopy toward me with 2 fingers, like he didn't want to touch it. "Keep this then, and keep your head down." We left with the rules, and our fear tamped down like coffee grounds. Casey said, "We're not following that, right?" "I'm not trying to die to make a point," I said. He nodded in that fake, reasonable way. "We'll set up cameras. Multiple angles. Thermal app. If it blackouts one, it won't black out all. We'll see if the schedule is actually precise. If it is, we'll figure out what it's doing between 4:30 and 5:15. Science. Science is just a story with math," I said. "That's religion with better fonts," he said. We went to the electronics store off campus that exists only to sell chargers to panicking freshmen and bought 2 cheap webcams and a plug-in mic that looked like a bug you could stick on a wall. Back in my room, we set one camera on the top shelf of my closet, angled through the slats to capture both beds, and the other perched on the curtain rod, watching the bathroom door. The mic I taped under the edge of Kevin's desk, its tiny green light a pulse with no heart. At 11, Casey left me with a fist bump and a look that said, "Text me if you decide to be stupid." I lay down, turned the cameras on, listened to the building wind down like a car idling into silence. I put the rule sheet on my chest like a thin shield. At 4:32, the building sucked air all at once like a lung going tight. I didn't see the time. I didn't need to. The room told me. The shower hissed. The smell washed out and slid under the blanket with me. Mint and metal and something sweet you only smell at funerals. The comforter across from me took a breath. "Don't get up," the voice said, easy as weather. Not an order, a warning. The way you tell a toddler not to touch a stove. I thought I might pee the bed. I didn't. I stayed in my rectangle. I counted. I pulled the blanket over my head when my scalp prickled like ants were nesting under the hair. There's a trick your brain does when you're trapped and have to keep still. It pretends to be out of your body for a second to check if there's room around your fear. Not a full drift, not anything fancy, just a flicker up and out. In that flicker, I saw a smear of a shape in the space between the beds. Not a person, not a shadow, just a place where the air was thicker. The cameras threw their little LEDs in the dark, devout, observing. The LEDs hiccuped, not flickered, hiccuped like they had swallowed a breath. At 5:12, the shower stopped. The air lightened. The comforter unlearned breathing. My blanket released me like it had been holding me down. I stared at the glowing dots of the cameras, as if they were stars that could rearrange themselves into an answer. I sent Casey the video files at 6. He watched them in class with his screen dimmed and texted me, "Bathroom cam, nothing. Closet cam, you're not going to like this." I put my phone face down on the desk and stared at Kevin's side of the room like it could feel the heat of my attention. Casey came by at noon like he couldn't wait for me to not like it in person. He plugged his laptop into my TV and pulled up the closet cam footage. At 4:31, 18 seconds of nothing. At 4:32, the closet slats micro-shivered like a small shape had walked past them. At 4:33, a smear of blankness occupied the space between the beds. It wasn't black. It wasn't anything. It was like looking at hot air over asphalt, that shimmer that's less a color and more a refusal of color. The frame glitched once. At 4:34, the comforter across from us sank. In the thermal overlay, the comforter went from a cool dull to a blue-black void, as if it had invited winter into itself. And in the soundtrack, Casey upped the gain, smoothed the noise, frowned as if sound had a throat you could clear, quiet, very quiet, a whisper, "Don't get up." We both exhaled at the same moment. He rewound. We watched it 6 times. "What happens if you do?" Casey said finally. "I don't know," I said. I thought of rule number 2. Don't stand in the space between beds. It felt less like superstition and more like the warning you put near a machine that has gears strong enough to take an arm off if you feed it your sleeve. The space was a mechanism. You didn't stand in a machine if you wanted to keep your shape. That night, I moved Kevin's bed 3 inches toward the wall to make the space smaller. It moved easy, too easy, like the floor had been polished under it, like somebody had practiced this exact adjustment a lot of times. I wedged my trash in between the foot of his bed and the wall to make any change noisy. At 3:50, I woke up on my own, which felt like cheating. Being awake to anticipate the rules feels like it gives you an edge. It doesn't. I lay holding my breath, as if not starting would keep the room from starting too. At 4:12, the hallway ice machine made a strangled cough and spit out a handful of cubes, then went silent. At 4:29, the vents stopped making their whisper. At 4:31, my blanket tightened like someone had tucked me in. At 4:32, the shower began. The shaving cream smell slid under the door. The trash can at the foot of Kevin's bed scraped the wall a hair, as if a hand had spun it with too much zeal and then adjusted it into straightness. My mouth filled with saliva like my body thought I should be eating. The powder line I hadn't replaced still marked yesterday's prints like soft bones. I got brave. Stupid brave. I lifted my head 2 inches. The blanket whispered against my ear like someone saying hush. The air pressed harder. I thought of the rule. Remain horizontal. Isn't a lifted head still horizontal? It's not standing. The kind of cheating you argue with a cop when they've already coughed in the direction of their handcuffs. I kept my head up and turned an inch. The space between the beds was occupied by a density that stole the idea of light. It wasn't a person-shaped thing. It was not a person. It had shoulders if you wanted it to. It had elbows if elbows are just decisions. Where its face should have been was an absence that filched the pattern from the curtain behind it. It wasn't a hole. It was a very earnest attempt at being the room, almost convincing. The attempt failed just enough that your eyes slid off the edges. If I tried to count the breaths and match them, the number snagged on nothing. The way the comforter moved on Kevin's bed made me think of someone lying on their back with their arms folded on their chest. The whisper came not from the air, but from the blanket, like my sheets had learned to speak. "Don't get up. I am sleeping," he whispered. The air loosened. Not much. Enough. The whisper didn't come again. The shower kept hissing in its narrow bandwidth. I watched the knot shape while my eyes stung. Tears made it look worse. Tear lenses warp ghosts. At 4:44, yes, I checked the clock with the corner of my vision because I'm that kind of stupid. The doorknob turned. Soft. Careful. The door didn't open. The knob held its breath, let it out, and unturned. I squeezed my eyes shut. The building held. The bed breathed. And then, somewhere under all of it, hideously ordinary, a phone vibrated on a wooden surface. 3 buzzes. Silence. 3 buzzes. The same pattern my phone used when Mom texted me. I was looking at my phone. It did not light. The buzz came from Kevin's desk. Water shut off. The smell thinned. The density between the beds lifted, and I knew it had because the room parted around something like water around a body. The trash can at the foot of Kevin's bed scraped a micron. At 5:13, the vent sighed, as if somebody had taken a hand off their mouth. I breathed with the building. I slept like I'd been hit. When I woke at 9, the rule sheet had fallen to the floor. On Kevin's desk, face down, a phone I had never seen before lay like it had always been there. Black case. No branding. I picked it up like you pick up a needle you found without seeing the tip. It was heavier than it looked. The screen was dead. No charging port I recognized. Just a slot. I turned it over. Where the camera should be was a neat circle of plastic scored with a spiral, like a fingerprint or a drain. I was not going to press it. I was not going to put my own spiral on it. I was going to take it to Logan and make him catch it with a paper towel like a spider. Casey, of course, pressed it. He pressed the spiral with his thumb, while I said, "Don't like a parent and a kid at the same time." The dead screen blinked once, not light, just a change in shade, and then a single line of text bloomed like a bruise. Check-in complete. In what Casey said, the phone emitted one long, tiny breath. A puff, like air escaping a freezer. The spiral warmed under his thumb, then cooled. The text faded. The screen went dead. That dead that makes you sure it could choose to wake whenever it wanted to. We didn't want to look up Kevin in the student directory because that would make him real, and if he was real, that meant he wasn't, and that was worse. We did it anyway. There were 6 Kevins in the first-year class, 2 in our building. I clicked their names and stared at small photos with 2 wide eyes. One of them had a nose ring, and the other had a big dog in his profile that looked like it would love every ghost. "Call," Casey said. "No," I said. He called. He is that person. The first ring, the second, the click, the human voice that answers without suspicion, because who calls anymore? So if you do, it's probably urgent. "Hello." "Hi, is this Kevin?" Casey said, looking at me like he wanted points. "Yeah." "Are you my friend's roommate?" Casey asked. "What?" "Wrong one," Casey said, and hung up. The next number went to voicemail on the second ring. The recorded voice sounded cheerful in a way that now, to me, reads as doomed. "Hey, you've reached Kevin. Leave a..." Casey hung up like he'd touched something hot. We stared at the black phone on the desk. The spiral. The absence of ports. The way it had said check-in with the kind of finality that belongs to hospitals and hotels. That afternoon, in the laundry room, a girl I recognized from the elevator stood with her hands on her hips, staring at a dryer that wouldn't open. "Been running for an hour," she said to nobody. "Says cycle complete, won't unlock." Her nails were bitten to meat. Her collarbone had a bruise shaped exactly like the lid of a shampoo bottle. She looked at me as if I might be maintenance. "You seen weird stuff?" she asked without preamble. "What do you mean?" I said, because the rules teach you to flatten questions. "My roommate wrote, 'Don't look at me on the ceiling in toothpaste,'" she said. I'm trying to decide if that's a cry for help or if she's protecting me from something worse. "What did you do?" "I put a sheet up like we were in a dorm room from movies," she said. If she really didn't want me to look at her, she should have said, "Don't make eye contact." Now I feel like I'm at a protest every time I go to bed. I laughed, ugly and grateful. She didn't laugh. "You hear water at night?" "Yes," I said. "I don't go in there," she said. That's the only rule I follow. At dinner, food stuck to the roof of my mouth like I'd used the wrong glue. Everything tasted like shaving cream. Casey watched me push noodles around and then said the thing he'd been waiting to say since morning. "We should stay up," he said. "Together. We should see what happens if at 4:45 you get up." "What part of your brain do you hate?" I asked. "The part that whispers at me when I try to sleep. It would shut up if I knew the rules weren't arbitrary. We test a hypothesis. We control a variable. We see. We die," I said. "You think we die," he said, as if death were an exaggeration, like spraining an ankle. "We'll move slow. We'll have blankets. If it says something, we don't talk back. If you start to stand and something happens, you lie down. We log it. We're careful. Careful," I repeated, because sometimes the only way to reject a word is to make your mouth full of it first. We set up the cameras again. We added a baby monitor that Casey stole from his cousin's registry, because this is what you use technology for when you don't have babies. He clipped the parent unit to his hoodie like a cop radio. It hissed in that small way monitors do, like a seashell, as if the room were a choir we were too far away to hear. He dragged my dresser 3 inches to the left so he could sit with his back against the wall with a blanket over his legs like a war correspondent. He put a second blanket on my bed and tucked it around me like he was giving me permission to be a coward. At 4:30, the building leaned into the hour. We didn't count down. We counted up. He whispered numbers with a finger on one hand to keep track, a tiny metronome. 4:31, 4:32. The water hissed. The smell rolled. The space between the beds gathered. The comforter accepted weight. "Don't get up," the room told me. I put one foot on the floor. It wasn't bravado. It was a decision that tasted like battery acid. My sock found carpet. The carpet was cold, not like winter, like tile in a morgue. I swung the second foot down. The blanket stayed tucked around my shoulders. The baby monitor hissed in my lap like it was excited to finally witness something. The air got thicker, but not in that way that pushes you down. It got thicker like honey does when you stir it. If I moved too fast, I felt sure something would laugh at me. I opened my mouth and whispered, "I'm sleeping," because it had worked last time, and also because the rules say to talk to the room like it's a dog and you're stealing its toy back. The whisper came again, not mad, just nearer. "Don't get up." I stood. The floor rose under me, an inch, then 2, like a lung inflating. My head felt like someone had put their hand over my skull and pressed. My knees trembled and held. The space between the beds snapped in a sharper focus the way your eyes do when you adjust. There was a person's shape exactly as tall as I am not moving. Not looking. Present. Not present like a friend. Present like a rule. Casey whispered, "You're up," like he couldn't believe that had ever been possible. I took one step forward. The presence took one in. I didn't hear it. I didn't see it. The space adjusted to admit it. The powder I hadn't refilled remembered where to deepen. It deepened. 2 sets of prints, mine and the other mine. A hand, that is what my brain called it, because the alternative would have been to call it correction, touch my sternum. No fingers, just pressure precisely where I'd learned as a kid to center my breathing when you count a calm down. The touch was very gentle and very indisputable. It moved me backward. I didn't want to move backward. The touch insisted like a polite paramedic. I took another forward step because I am dumber than I am scared. The touch pressed. My knees wobbled. The pressure increased, and there was a sound that happens when you press on a sheet of ice just below cracking. Not a loud sound. A promise. "Okay," I said. Not to the thing. To myself. "Okay. Okay," Casey repeated, which helped in a way that did not change reality. I took a step backward. The presence did not follow. The pressure unweighted. The whisper said the same thing a third time. This is important. It didn't sound angry, and it didn't sound like it cared about me. It sounded like a sign that tries to keep you from walking into a door. It sounded like instruction, not ownership. I sat on my bed. I lay down. The presence returned to the space. The comforter across from me rose and fell. The baby monitor crackled, and a very faint voice I could have sworn was a woman said something like, "Facility 3, acknowledged," and then the feed went dead, and the little LED went from green to red and stayed there until 5:13 when it reset itself as if it had always been plugged in. We did not sleep. We did not high-five. We did not declare victory. Casey sat with me until the pink edge of day hooked itself around the curtain, and then he said, "It doesn't want you to be between the beds." Me specifically? You, the idea of you. You, anybody. He rubbed his neck. His birthmark looked like fresh fingerprints. "It's like a traffic lane. No pedestrians." "It's a corridor," I said. "Yeah," he said. "For what?" We decided on an experiment, because that is the word you use when you want to act as if intention isn't involved. That afternoon, I taped a piece of paper on the wall between our beds and drew a rectangle in pencil where the space lived, and a circle where I stood, and a line where the other set of prints had stopped. The paper didn't look creepy. That's what I hate about paper. It is honest and boring. I wrote questions inside the rectangle, because if people at tables can slide planchettes around to pretend dead relatives, make spelling mistakes, I can do the baby version with a big pen. Who are you? Are you Kevin? Do you live here? Are you asleep? Is there a rule I don't know? Then, because I am not interested in being the main character in a cautionary tale, I wrote, "If you don't want to answer, don't." We waited for night, like a bad test you've studied for. At 4:32, the air thickened. The comforter accepted weight. The shower hissed. The smell spread. The baby monitor clicked on as if a finger had touched it. I lay on my bed, flat as a floor. Casey sat with his back to the wall, his eyes on the paper. There was a moment, a small one, where the pen lifted off the tape. Not floated, just lifted enough that I saw space under it where there had been none. Then the pen moved. It didn't write. I need to be clear. It did not pretend to have cursive. It did not make grand arcs. It scraped a mark where someone who has learned to hold something precise tested the weight of it. Then it drew a line. Short. Firm. It stopped. It had drawn through my question. "Are you Kevin?" Casey breathed out a quiet, "Holy shit." The pen flicked. It drew another short line through. "Do you live here?" It paused, as if considering, which is the sort of human verb you shouldn't assign to anything you don't want to make human. And then it underlined, "Is there a rule I don't know?" I had written small. The underline made the sentence look important. The pen pointed at the bottom margin. It tapped. Once. Twice. I had room to write one more line. "Right?" Casey whispered, because he is a child of permission. I wrote, "What rule?" The pen hesitated as if listening. And then it wrote, in block letters big enough to chew, each stroke deliberate, each line a push, not a finesse. "Don't answer the door. The door. The door." We both looked at it with a mindless obedience your eyes have to anything named. It looked like a door. A handle, not a knob. A peephole smeared with fingerprints. At some point this week, someone had slid one of those cutesy dry erase boards onto it that says, say, HI, and nobody had. The board had a cluster of magnets shaped like cats in bow ties holding up a schedule that said quiz, Kim, 8 a.m., and also nothing else. "Has anyone knocked?" Casey whispered. "I thought I heard someone try the knob." I said, "Last night." "Yeah," I said, because the lie would have been to say one night. The pen dropped. It clattered onto Kevin's desk. The movement of it made my teeth ache like I'd taken a breath of ice air. The shower hissed its end. The air thinned. The comforter never lifted the way you think it should. It just unlearned something. At 5:13, we were alone with the paper and the message like a magnet under our bed. We left a note on the inside of the door that said, in big block letters to match, "Do not knock." It made me feel better, like shaking a locked handle makes you feel like it won't open. The door knocked at 4:44. 3 short knocks, like a polite neighbor or a cop just starting his career who hasn't learned to bang yet. The peephole swallowed light. I covered my head with the blanket and stared at the new rule on the paper and listened to Casey stop breathing, because sometimes the only way to listen hard is to make your own body come quiet. "Don't answer." He breathed, barely ink, more ghost than voice. Don't get up, the room agreed. The knocks came again, with a little impatience threaded through like a rope. A voice, male, young, cheerful in that brittle way. Hey man, it's Kevin. I think my key got demagnetized. I bit the inside of my cheek hard enough to taste iron. Something about the joke inside the lie made my tongue want to call a joke back. That's the trap. We are wired to be polite. Monsters know. Logan told me you had my phone, the voice said. Can you just crack it for me? I can come back for it. I just can't get in. Dude, small. Casey put his hand on my ankle under the blanket. Hard. The kind of touch you use to hold a thing in the world. Facility 3. The baby monitor whispered to itself again, little radio brain fogging out through a throat not meant for it. The handle turned gently. It stopped. It turned the other way, with a soft little cluck like someone humoring a stubborn lock. The peephole darkened and brightened as a body moved, adjusted, minded itself. Then, after a beat that stretched thin and thinner, the body went away. We lay like that until long after the building decided day had arrived and the hallway started filling with dumb shoes. Casey unhooked his hand from my ankle. I cried, which is a thing my body does when I don't give it permission, and he pretended not to see, which is the only kind thing in a small room. When the sun was fully up, we went to Logan with the paper. We didn't bother to hide it. We slapped it on the desk. He stared at the letters like they were a personal failure he'd thought he had aged out of. Don't make me take this, he said. You tried to get into our room last night, Casey said. What? Someone knocking said they were Kevin and that you told them about the phone. Logan's face folded in and then ironed back out. I don't do night rounds on your floor, he said. We rotate. So who said your name? I asked. Who knew about the phone? Logan looked up the hall and down it again. His lips went white like he'd pressed them against his teeth. Give me the paper, he said. I'll shred it. No, Casey said. Then fold it and put it somewhere and never show it to anyone who will make me write a report, he said. And then, because whatever veneer of professional didn't survive this long, listen to it. I know it makes you nuts. Listen, don't open the door at that time. If you open it, you make it easier for whatever's making that noise to understand this door as one that opens. What happens if it comes in? I asked. Logan rubbed his eyes, and for a second, he looked like he was going to say something that would make my life worse, but give me control. He didn't. He shook his head. I don't know. We don't let it. We teach you not to let it. That's the job. I said, is there really a Kevin? He didn't answer. Casey stepped into space where he'd left silence and said, we're going to the basement. Level something. There's a room down there everyone pretends isn't a room. Because Casey is like that. He will take a drop of information and make a weather system with it. He will go to where the pipes meet because he thinks pipes have answers. Logan could have said no. He could have told us a story about how the laundry machines had code locks. Instead, he said, if you go down there, wear hoodies. If anyone stops you, say you're with maintenance. Carry something that looks heavy. That helps. Helps with what? The part of their brain that knows to ask questions, he said. We waited until just before quiet hours because that is when hall monitors are the most bored. We wore dark hoodies and carried a toolbox and a laundry basket with a broken wheel. We took the service elevator because Casey said if you do something with casual confidence, you can go anywhere. The elevator had an extra button, half inside the panel, so it didn't sit flush. B, the kind of button you have to bully a little to make it light. The basement smelled like wet dust and detergent and something older. The hallway lighting was honest about itself, not enough. We walked past a row of cages containing abandoned mini fridges with duct tape cords. A sign on the wall said NO student access in a font that clearly did not mean it. A second sign taped over it in a hand that looked like Logan's said please. The door we were headed toward wasn't hidden exactly. It was just the kind of door you scroll past in a building like this. It had a key card reader and a paper note like all bureaucracies have backups to themselves. The note said facilities. It had an arrow. The arrow had been scratched to point to a different door at some point, then scratched back. Casey waved a library card at the reader. It beeped its opinion. He laughed once, and then saw I wasn't laughing and put the laugh away like you pocket a coin. He knocked like an idiot. 133. The same pattern. He pulled his hand back like the door had stung him. The door unlocked. He looked at me. I looked at him. We had the same dumb expression that says we deserve whatever is about to happen. Inside was a corridor with poured concrete walls and a floor that had wanted to be level and had given up. The lights came on in a row, like a grin. The smell of shaving cream lived here full time. Past a turn, past a stack of boxes labeled with numbers that weren't room numbers, but something more like dates or coordinates. There was a room with no door that held a series of beds covered in thick plastic sheets, like they were upholstered in convection oven bags. They were all made. They were all perfect. The plastic hugged the contours of mattresses like meat wrapped for the freezer. The plastic on the bed closest to us had a dip in it, a neat depression, as if someone invisible had sat at the edge and then lain back careful, funeral careful. The plastic squeaked just once in that tiny way that is mostly air adjusting itself. Holy shit, Casey said again, which for him is an essay. The corner of the room had a metal shelving unit with boxes. Each box had a label with two names. One was always the same, Kevin. The other changed. Kevin/Dax. Kevin/Isaiah. Kevin/M. The last name's initial was rubbed off. What the hell is this? Casey asked the only person near him who never had an answer. I put my hand out without thinking. The plastic on the nearest bed had a warmth to it that didn't belong in a room like this. The dip in the plastic deepened, as if I were kinder, I might sit and keep someone company. I stepped back because I have some self-preservation left. On the shelf below the boxes, a stack of black phones, each with the spiral on the back, each with duct tape across the front with a name scrawled in marker. Kevin, checked in. Kevin, retrieved. Kevin, lost. The handwriting wasn't all the same. The tape was. The spiral looked like all spirals look if you stare at them too long, like a tunnel you should not put your eye into. There was a clipboard on a hook, because of course there was. I took it down and found a list. It wasn't a log. Logs are neat. It was a list written by someone who needed to remember something as they walked. A schedule. 4:30 to 5:15 corridor. 5:15 reset. 6 o'clock towels. 7 o'clock phones. Under that, a note. Don't answer the door. We left without touching anything else because Casey, for all his arrogance, understands the physics of contamination when the world is weird. The door closed behind us. The card reader chirped its opinion. Upstairs, the hallway felt airless in comparison. That night we locked the door chain and all and pushed my dresser in front of it, because if all else fails, you put furniture in front of fear like it's a bear and you're in a cabin. We taped over the peephole. We put the black phone in the bottom drawer of my desk and shut it hard. We sat up playing Mario with the sound down, which felt like a sin, and jumped every time the pipes breathed. At 4:44, the door handle turned anyway. The chain held. The dresser bumped the frame. The peephole didn't matter. Knuckles rapped, 3, pause, 3. The voice that came through the door sounded like it had practiced being me. Hey, it said. It's me. I forgot my key. Don't, I breathed. Don't answer. Casey had already breathed back. We lay still. The knock stopped. The air in the room whispered around the edges of the dresser, finding cracks. The smell of shaving cream rose, tied high, and then went away as neatly as a man turning off a television with a click. Do we tell Logan? Casey asked in a whisper at 5:13, as if the hour lasted longer than the minute. We tell him if we die, I said. My joke sounded ugly. I slept and woke with a headache like a hat. Professor Holly's voice in econ sounded like someone tearing the plastic off a couch. There's always a fight you pick when you're too tired to keep being human. Mine was with Logan. I waited until he looked like he had something else to do, and then I parked my tired in front of his desk and told him about the basement. The beds. The boxes. His hands on the keys froze mid-tap. He didn't say, "You're not supposed to be down there." He didn't say that's not a thing. He said, damn it, like I'd told him a roof was leaking where he just patched it. What is Kevin? I asked. He took a breath like he was putting a strap across something heavy. A placeholder, he said. It isn't, he stopped. He started over, speaking like he was inching across a thin-shelled lake. Kevin is a name we put on forms when the roommate hasn't arrived. A dummy assignment. It makes the system happy. It means we can leave the room open and bill at capacity. It's a joke. It's not even a good joke. That's the administrative answer, Casey said. What's the other one? Logan rubbed his eye like he was trying to erase it. Rooms don't like to be empty. Spaces organize themselves. People attach patterns to save energy. This building has a way. If you put a shape in a space in a routine, sometimes the routine fills in for you. Then you have a shape with a schedule. You keep saying words like they're not supposed to be frightening, I said. We make it safe, Logan said, and didn't sound sure. How many people have had this happen? Casey asked. Enough that we have a page, Logan said, and tapped the binder. Enough that we put locks on the basement phone shelf. Enough that the facility's note got rewritten after last spring. Rewritten how? I asked. He held my gaze like he might lose it in the hallway. It used to say, don't get up. Now he hit the door harder. The week became a pattern. I did not get up. I did not answer the door. I learned that if I had to pee between 4:30 and 5, I could whisper, I'm sleeping, and the need would go away like a misfired text. I learned that if I squinted into the space, it was easier to accept what was there. I learned the voice would repeat itself only twice, like it had a budget for help and had to save. Casey, who had less sense than me, but more curiosity, decided to bait the door one night. He wrote a note that said, do not knock. Really? And taped a razor to it. If whatever's out there scratches that, we'll have DNA, he said. And I said, of course, as if DNA is the thing you should be after. At 4:44, the knocking came. Soft, polite. It waited like a gentleman. The razor whispered against paper like a tiny violin. In the morning, we peeled the note off. The blade had a clear, waxy curl on it, like a fingernail sliver. Casey grinned. He's that person. He went to the science building and asked a kid he knew in a lab to look at it. The kid said, we don't do that, and then did it anyway because no one likes rules. The kid texted later. Not blood, not nail, not anything he can make stick to any known thing. It's like you shave plastic, he wrote. Are you fucking with me? We stopped with the experiments after that. You don't shave the door of your own room and then wonder why your dreams are loud. The RA on a different floor held a meeting about safety and set out plates of Oreos you had to lift with a glove. The safety message was, lock your door, don't walk alone, don't prop the fire doors open. If you see something, say something. None of the somethings were the thing that was my something. In the third week, a new student moved into 3B, the room next to us. I met him in the hall when he tried to carry his own mini fridge and almost lost a foot. He had a scar down his forearm that looked like someone had tried to draw a straight line on him and got bored. Name's Gabe, he said. You got a roommate? Kevin, I said before my brain could stop my mouth. Cool, he said. Mine too. We stared at each other like mirrors that have realized they are cousins. You hear water at weird times? I asked. Yup, he said. He showers like a Navy ghost. You have rules. He pulled a crumpled photocopy out of his pocket and smoothed it with his palm. Same rounded font. Same pencil note. Same don't get up. We compared notes quietly the way you compare scars and don't touch them. Gabe's rule sheet had an extra line, pencil, under the rest. Don't sleep with the door open. I didn't do that anyway. He didn't either. We didn't ask who had. You bring anyone over? He asked. No, me either. We didn't say what we were thinking. That maybe you don't invite people into a room that has strange courtesy rules at set times. That maybe the courtesy bullies you into decency you didn't consent to. At 4:44 that night, the knocking came again. The voice said, come on, man, just crack it. And then, softer, using my name very gently, like a friend at a bar who's telling you a story you don't want to hear, but you lean in anyway. I didn't answer. The handle jiggled with that lightness people use when they've been told a lock is stubborn and they want to show they are more patient than whoever failed. The peephole darkened. The smell of shaving cream concentrated near the base of the door, like someone had sprayed it under with a can. The baby monitor hissed in my ear like it was listening to itself remember. When it was over, when the room remembered how to be itself, and I remembered how to swallow. Casey said, "You know what's gonna happen if you ever do open that door, right?" "What?" "It's gonna be really fucking normal," he said. "That's the scary part. He'll walk in like a guy who forgot his key. He'll smile like he's sorry he woke you. He'll get into the bed. You won't see anything bad. And then at some point you'll turn, and he'll be closer than you intended, and you will smell only shaving cream and a little toothpaste, and you won't remember exactly when he came in, and that is how the building gets you to keep accommodating it. You'll stop telling people. You'll stop asking Logan for help. You'll let the door lock fail. You'll get used to the smell. You'll match his breathing because that's what we do when we love things." "Love," I said. "Or fear," he said. "You know how close those are." "Shut up," I said without heat. "Don't get up," he said, smiling sadly, and tucked the blanket around my shoulder like he always did at the end of that hour. We made it to midterms like that. I forgot, sometimes, that I was living with a rule and a presence and a door I didn't open. I sat in a library corral until my spine felt like a ruler. I ate PB&J because I couldn't taste anything else. I showered at 3 in the afternoon and watched the drain like it would get ideas. I carried the black spiral phone in my bag to student services and told an office student with mascara, like armor, that it wasn't mine. She said, "Leave it here, I'll give it to facilities." I turned and walked away. I did not leave it with her. The phone warmed through the bag, and I took it to the basement and set it on the shelf where it belonged. When I turned to leave, the bed with the plastic dip in it creaked a little, like someone shifting the weight of their heart from one side to the other. You want an ending? I know. This is YouTube, right? The night we broke the rule. The night something dragged me. The night Logan came clean. A good narrator would give you a clean Act 3. There is one. It's just not heroic. It's exactly as ugly as fear is when you're 20 and still convinced you're the cleverest idiot alive. Casey got drunk. He didn't drink much. He wasn't that guy. He didn't like who he was when he lost syntax. But his cousin had a birthday, and his ex was there, and somebody poured something into a solo cup that smelled like nail polish remover and grief. He texted me a bunch of emojis that didn't belong together, and then, "I'm coming to crash on your floor." I said okay like a reflex. I didn't remember the time when I said it. I didn't look at it like a rule. He knocked at 4:40. 221. Not our pattern. A different person's muscle memory. I opened the door without thinking because I knew the knock and my brain made a highway from that to permission. He fell on me heavy and warm and said, "God, I hate her." And I said, "I know." And he said, "You don't." And I said, "I will." And I led him into the space between the beds. He is the person who sat with me every night. He is the person who touched my ankle when the door tried my name. He is the person who laughed at my fear like a companion laughs to lighten it. He dragged his blanket like a cape and lay down on the carpet with his face at my knee like I was a campfire. At 4:44, the knock came. Gentle, polite. My body knew it and reacted. I reached for Casey to pull him up onto my bed because the rule slipped in and put its fingers into my fear like it was a puppet. "What?" he murmured, already sliding back towards sleep. The handle turned. The chair I had wedged under it made an undignified farting noise, and the handle accepted that, turned back, waited. The voice said, "Come on, man," and then Logan said, and then, more quietly, my name. Casey slept with his eyes half open, sometimes like a cat. The left one made a slit. He whispered, "Don't answer the door," without waking, like he was the one who'd written it on the paper. I lay there with my hand on his shoulder and my heart slamming, and never once in my life have I wanted to obey more. The rule was simple and the rule was safe. I could sit still and make it to 5:13, and then everything would be the same as it always is, which is to say unbearable but survivable. Casey snored, just once, soft as a saw starting. The shape between the beds gathered itself. It wasn't angry. I need to tell you that. If it had been angry, I could deal with that. It was patient, like a protocol. It unfolded and folded around the space until the edges of it brushed the blanket on the floor. The blanket moved in a complicated way that told me it had moved around a body. The smell of shaving cream, stronger than it had ever been, shot high and then flattened. Casey's breath hitched. The blanket dipped at the throat. He said, "Okay," like he always said to me when the hour ended. Except this time, there was no ending yet. The pen lifted on the desk and tapped. It tapped the paper where we had written the door rule. It tapped again, polite. I sat up. That was a mistake. The presence pressed, my sternum a button. The push wasn't violent. It was corrective. I slid back down involuntarily. My head hit the pillow with a small, unheroic thump. "Let him up," I whispered, which was a wrong verb. The presence strengthened. The blanket around Casey's throat tightened. His voice guttered. He rolled onto his side, and the pressure followed like a seatbelt across the ribs. He made a sound I had never heard him make, a dog sound, low and confused. "Stop," I said. "I'm sleeping." It was an appeal to a rule that wasn't written for this situation. I don't know what I thought it would do. The presence paused. Rules can't pause. People can. It paused. "Take my bed," I said, and didn't know why until I heard it come out of my mouth. The correction lessened a fraction. The blanket on the other bed drew a breath that was mine. The pressure on Casey dropped to just enough to remind him where he was, and he clawed his way toward it like someone dragged through a dream toward surface. He grabbed for my mattress with the same dumb hand that had tucked my blanket in 100 times, and I caught his wrist and pulled and put him onto my bed like I had permission to. He sobbed once, a stupid tear burst. The presence changed shape the way a decision does. It did not move like feet. It expressed itself over a new surface. The comforter rose. It rose in my own rhythm. The baby monitor said nothing because what does a baby know when two parents have broken a rule together? The door knocked again politely. We didn't answer. The handle tried. It didn't get in. The presence didn't go to the door. It stayed in the space where it pretended to be me, where it got to breathe with a shape. At 5:13, the room relaxed. The presence let me go. The comforter went slack with the kind of abandonment that hurts. Casey rolled onto his back plastered in sweat and stared at the ceiling where I had not written any messages and said, very calmly, "I don't want to die in a dorm." "You won't," I said, and hoped I wasn't a liar. We told Logan. We told him everything, including the part where we broke the rule, because once you start being honest, it's hard to stop. He didn't yell. He didn't write us up. He closed the office door and sat on the floor with his back against it like a guy holding a chair under the knob of something that could push. "You need to move," he said. "Today. You told me moving would put me at the bottom of the list," I said. "That was before you fed it a different breath," he said. "We don't let it learn new tricks. That's the job." He looked older than he had any right to. They moved me in an hour. I didn't have time to fold anything. I stuffed my life into a bin and watched as two student workers, both of them with those yellow vests that scream we're not paid enough to do this, pushed my stuff down the hall and into a new room with a new roommate who was solid and freckled and real. His name was Theo. He had a broken headset hanging off his bedpost and a sketchbook open to a drawing of a hand. "Hey," he said. "I snore. I don't mind." I lied because a human noise felt like a miracle. Casey visited and stood in the doorway like he didn't dare cross a new rule into a room that hadn't written one for him. He looked tired and alive. He said, "You good?" "I don't know," I said. It was more honest than yes. "You going back for your phone?" he asked, meaning the black one. "No," I said. "It's not mine." "Whose is it?" he asked, the kind of question that does not deserve an answer. "Kevin's," I said, "and also mine." I slept. I slept like my body remembered how to sleep. I woke at 4:44 anyway out of habit and listened to Theo breathe and didn't smell anything but whatever cheap detergent he liked. Weeks later, in the cafeteria, I saw Logan sitting by himself staring at a blank page in a notebook like it might write itself. I sat across from him and didn't say hello because sometimes hello is a bravery you don't have. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," he said. "I'm holding a door with a chair. What happens to that room now?" He didn't look up. "We assign a Kevin who never arrives. We ask the real roommate to keep the rules. We wait until summer. We bleach. We pretend the building forgets. The building does not forget." He smiled without pleasure. "All buildings are monsters. Some are just better at playing nice." "Why shaving cream?" I asked because something about that banal detail had wrapped around my brain and wouldn't let go. Someone told a story once about a kid who cut his leg shaving the first week of school and bled through the towel and lay there wishing for his mom because he thought he was going to fail out for missing his first class. He said, "You know how stories stick. The room liked it. It's a smell that says adult. It's a smell that says you're trying." "I hate it," I said. "Good," he said. "Hate the wrong things. That'll keep you alive." I wish I could tell you the story ends there. It doesn't. That's not how stories work. They close the way doors do when you pull them hard and hope the latch catches. They drift if you don't press. At the end of the semester, I moved out and threw away the cheap baby powder and the rule sheet and did not look back at the door with the magnets. I laughed at jokes in rooms with people in them. I put my head on a shoulder once and didn't smell anything but someone who ate a lot of mint gum. I walked past the basement door and did not press the button. I lived. Except last week. This is the part one shouldn't say out loud. This is the part you're not supposed to post because what you speak can hear you. Last week in my apartment, not on campus, a building with new drywall and a landlord who tucks his shirt in like it owes him money. I woke up at 4:44 for no reason, and the air had that taste to it, faint, not even a smell, a taste like mint over metal. And the room held its breath, waiting for me to move, and far down the hall, a pipe hissed to hiss it. Didn't have any reason to make, because no one else in the building is a person who showers then. Not here, not now. I lay very still. I put my hand on my chest and counted 5 breaths. The room listened. I whispered, because you don't shout when a rule pretends it isn't one. "I'm sleeping." And from very close, too close, a voice I had taught myself not to hate said, almost kind, almost grateful to have a job again, "Don't get up.